Hello, everybody, and welcome to Coproduce Care's live stream. My name is Sophie Chester-Glynn, and I'm delighted to do another live stream with you again today, focusing on Black History Month. We're in October, we're coming to the end, and I'm delighted to have a fantastic panel to talk to you about race, ethnicity, and social care. As far as I know, we're the only people who are doing this in this sphere, so hopefully you're engaged and enjoy what we're going to be talking about. And I'm not going to do too much of an intro, just to say that we have some fantastic speakers with us. We have Nnamani, I hope I said your name right, Suan, Clenton Farquharson and Dudley Sawyer, and we're really looking forward to getting into the issues of some wonderful inspirational people in Black history, as well as looking at how we're really affecting social care. And the whole idea of these streams is called the colour of care, because we want to explore the nuances that are in the different care provision that we have. So the ethnicities, the cultures that make the social care sector so vibrant and actually do bring out some of the wonderful aspects of care. So we want to explore all of that. We want to talk about our inspirators. So inspirational figures, which I'm really looking forward to, because we've got some fantastic suggestions from our panelists today on inspirational figures. So that's me pretty much over and done with. As I do with all of our live streams, I'm sorry if I'm a broken record on this, but we do really rely on people subscribing to wherever you're watching us. So if you're on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're watching us on Facebook, then like it and share, so we can get more people to come onto our channel and really open up the discussion. So we're really looking forward to getting more subscribers. I've actually set a target of 1,000 subscribers by Christmas, which is ridiculous because we've only got like 350. But you know, you got to set yourself a target, otherwise you will never have anything to strive to. And of course, the whole point of having a target is that it reaches more people. We get more people to engage. We don't have it as a closed discussion between professionals or people who just like these type of topics. We want to open it up, so it's amongst the general public who have never even thought about these issues. So the more subscribers we get, the more people who engage, and of course, the more people we can get these messages out to. So it's not just me going on about it, because I feel like it really does mean something. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in our panelists. Do we have Suan, Clenton and Dudley? So hello all of you, and I'm just going to ask you to kind of introduce yourselves, and then we'll kind of just bring people in and out to talk about your individual inspirational speakers. So I'm going to have to start off with you, Suan, because I don't know if I messed up your surname.
No, you did it perfectly well. It's Suan Nnamani, and I'm getting used to it myself because most people know me by Balcom, which is my so I am Suan Nnamani. I manage 117 bedded nursing home in Haringey Borough, and I have been a registered manager in the sector for 18 years, and I'm very passionate about the subject matter of BAME, and it being Black History Month. Look forward to sharing with you my poem, which is a COVID poem, i.e. in the pandemic, and looking forward to hearing from the other speakers.
Lovely, thank you. Can I move to Dudley?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Dudley. My background, or where I come from, is my parents originally inspired me by opening up a care home 30 years ago. So I grew up in and around the home where I worked around the sector. I'm presently a chair for LCAS care manager forums across 10 London boroughs, working alongside Skills for Care. I'm also a care consultant, part of Care Vision, a successful care management software and app, and of course an advocate for change within the social care sector. I've recently just launched a website and a company, a business should we say, known as Resca, which I will inform you about when I'm talking on my segment. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Dudley. And this is always a theme with fantastic inspirational people I have on here. Just you're all doing so much in this sphere. It's incredible. And last but not least, Clenton.
Hello, everyone. My name's Clenton Farquharson. I grew up in a Jamaican family, and the culture is similar to other West Indian homes and cultures, especially in the UK. And one of the proverbs from Jamaica is out of many, one people. And the motto for Jamaica flags up and sums up diversity of cultures which over the centuries have come together to make up what defines Jamaica. I think one of the biggest takings and lessons that my mum and my dad gave me was the proverb, it takes a whole village to raise a child, and that stuck with me. And as I'm a disabled person from a black and minority ethnic background, I do work in equality and diversity and social justice. And I employ my own personal assistant and manage my 85-year-old mum's personal budget, and which she uses to employ a personal assistant. And I also the chair of Think Local Act Personal, and also am a trustee of Race Equality Foundation and an ambassador for Disability Rights UK.
Looks like lost Sophie for a second there. I'm just going to send her a message because I think her internet might have gone down for a moment there. Sorry, Sue, would you mind talking about your inspirational speaker for Black History Month just while we try and get Sophie back on?
Okay, am I the first one up from the program? So my inspirational Black History Month person is Maya Angelou. She was born in 1928 and was an American poet, a memoirist, and a civil rights activist. And I chose Maya Angelou because I myself enjoy poetry, which I've written one during the pandemic, the COVID period, which is Poems in a Pandemic, and will be featured in their book. Maya Angelou, obviously being a really powerful female activist, I chose her as my person for Black History Month.
Thank you. I'm sorry I dropped out there with my dodgy internet. But no, that's wonderful. And I think we're going round the table really discussing our inspirational figures. And I wondered, did you want to use this space now to read out your poem, Sue-Ann?
Sure, I can do that. Yes. So I'm reading from my sheet. So sorry if I look down. My poem is called COVID, Not the Death of Us. I awoke to the sound of my mobile phone's WhatsApp. Another message of RIP in the chat. Who was it now and how did they go? My mind racing to think, who needs to know? Did we do all we could and cared as much as we can? Or was COVID yet another thief that put them in a pan? The silence that lingers with empty lounges and quiet rooms where there once was laughter and sounds of bloom. The tearful carers and nurses who didn't know how to cope now walk around with faces that is trying to bring hope. The pride I feel as a registered manager of the love and support in treating residents like a mother or grandmother, by nurturing them and holding their hands when we are all in this lockdown with no end planned, to help our families grieve as they see their loved ones die, to keep strong and resilient and try not to cry, to walk away from it all and to try to start over as we learn how to crawl, to keep our heads high knowing we tried, and again silently go into an empty room whilst we have a cry. Thank you.
That's incredible and so powerful, Sue-Ann. And it is seldom that you hear that somebody, either a care worker or a manager, that actually goes into sort of a creative space and talks about their experiences in this way. So I think it's fantastic that you've done it. And I think so many people will relate to what you're saying. Can I just ask at what point during the last few months did you feel like you needed to sit down and write this?
So there was a poetry competition and there were different themes. So I employed all my care staff, all my colleagues from different departments to actually find their creative spirit and just dig deep and see if they could come up with a poem. So I thought, being, setting the trend, i.e. as I love poetry, that I'll start off by doing my own poem. And I think it actually helped me as an individual to just debrief, because there were so many things happening, and I think sometimes we don't get that time and space to actually get away and have that creative space. But that's why it was done, is on the back of the Poems in a Pandemic brief.
That's wonderful. And can you talk a bit about that book? Who commissioned that book? How did you hear about that?
So LCAS started putting together weekly Friday sing-alongs for the residents and staff at 11 o'clock. And out of that came Poems in the Pandemic. And throughout the country, people wrote these poems, and then they had judges that judged the poems, and they're going to be putting together, because they've received some funding, to put together a poetry book which will be published with all the poems that either won or were shortlisted within that.
That's fantastic. And I love the idea of this weekly sing-along, because it's uplifting. It's not just about the doom and gloom. And I feel like your poem is very reflective of not just thinking about being negative and the press that we hear all the time. It's also we're people, and we need more than just the bad news. So thank you so much for writing it and for sharing that with us today. And hopefully people will be, when is the book, when is it released already?
They're still processing it at the moment, but I will let you know so it can be shared.
Yes, that would be lovely. Thank you so much, Joanne. We're going to come back to you, but I'm going to take you to the stream just for a moment. Hello, Dudley. So moving on to you. Are you able to share your inspirational person with us?
Oh, definitely. And thank you again, Sophie. I thought of personal inspiration. There's so many people I could have chosen. But one thing I thought, being Black History Month and really being interested in history, the notion is where Black History Month started and how it originated. So I've chosen my personal inspiration. His name is Ayakaba Adaya Sibo. He's the architect of Black History Month in the UK. He created Black History Month in the UK in 1987, which was also the African Jubilee year. The original goal was to create an enabling cultural space in the UK. The story was, how it originated was that a colleague came to him at work one morning. She was brokenhearted and she revealed to him that a 7-year-old son, who she had proudly named Marcus after Marcus Garvey, before going to bed, asked her, "Mum, why can't I be white?" This prompted him to go around asking questions about identity. He found a crisis of identity faced us, so he conceived an annual celebration of the contributions of African, Caribbean, and people of African descent to economic, cultural, and political life from not just London, but the UK, revering Black people throughout history. The question was, and I was quite fascinated, why he chose the month of October. He chose the month of October to celebrate Black History Month, as the weather wasn't that cold and children were back after a long summer holiday, feeling fresh and open to hearing and sharing stories of Black culture and history. Also as well, October is known as the month of tolerance and reconciliation in African culture. So it's apt that the Black History Month enables us to reconnect with our heritage. Finally, for me, what I found which really was a powerful feature was the Black History Month symbol for Sankofa, which means learning from the past with the benefit of hindsight. All of this is quite intriguing, but really resonates. And from anyone who doesn't know, now has an understanding of how it came about, when it happened, began in 1987, and a lot of things that people don't know. So this is my inspirational character that I've chosen.
Again, that is incredible. And I knew absolutely none of that. So I feel like I've really learned something. So thank you so much for sharing. And do you find that when you talk about that person to other people, they also don't know, or am I just in the minority?
No, I think it's quite interesting. You know, a lot of people always think of American Black History Month, which is in February, and don't realize that the UK Black History Month is a different date and it's a completely different reasons. And I think people haven't studied that. And easily, many people have really just looked at the American Black History Month and followed through from that. So in the UK, we have our own identity and the reasons, and those are the reasons why it was started and it was funded. Really how it came about, the story is very intriguing about identity. I think it's a big point that we all have to, and we can all relate to.
And in terms of how learning about Black history or the discussion around it, or even that inspirational figure or anyone else, how has that influenced you in your work in social care?
I think it's really important because what he looked at was really looking at not just identity and showing our place in society. So in the sector, we have an identity. I mean, figures are that we comprise of almost at least 20-25% of the sector in itself. And so we have an identity. So to celebrate identity is really a key factor. And I think that's something that probably is forgotten. Part and parcel of this, and how a lot of, after the George Floyd death, unfortunately, a lot of people were looking at what identity they have within their own sectors. And I think this is something that we can celebrate. We have the second highest amount of Black and Asian minority ethnic workforce in the country. So I think it's a real key factor that we should celebrate and recognize our heritage and our culture.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Okay, we'll come back to you as well shortly. And I'm going to bring in Clenton. Hello again, Clenton. So on to you and your inspirational figures from Black History Month.
It was really hard to choose. I've got two, and I'd like to talk about the two I've chosen. The first one is Bell Hooks, better known by her pen name. Gloria Jean Watkins is an American author, professor, and feminist and social activist. And the name better known by, like I said, Bell Hook, is borrowed from her maternal grandmother. And why I'm interested in Bell Hook, it's she talks, and her story writing and poems and is built on and paved the way for me to understand intersectionality through the lens of feminism. And it reminds me for myself to uphold the tenets of self-love. And Bell Hook, if you get the chance to read her book, All About Love, shares this vision of stripping away its cloak of sex, romance, and a desire for, to ask us to consider love, nurture, and our own spiritual growth, as well as that of other people. And I just think that's quite apt when we look at seeing how love as a combination of trust, commitment, care, respect, knowledge, and responsibility. And I think it's quite fitting if we look through the lens of social care, because it touches our lives where we never, ever thought social care might go. Another book, because she's done 3 books all about love, and then she talked about there will the will to change, and the feminist is for everyone. And, you know, are really useful books. But the space for me to think about intersectionality on this is Professor Kimberly Williams Crenshaw is an American lawyer and civil rights advocate and philosopher, and leads on the critical race theory, who developed the theory of intersectionality. And I came across Professor Kimberly Crenshaw and coined the term in 1989 to describe how race, class, and gender and other individual characteristics intersect with one another and overlap. And intersectionality, was relatively obscure in a legal concept. Then it went viral. And why I'm interested in it, it's a way of having a dialogue through, if we look at COVID-19 and the widening of inequality. And I think Kimberly Crenshaw enables me to understand and gain insight into intersectionality as a lens through to which you can see where power comes from and collides with privilege, where and also where it interlocks and intersects. And it's not simply that there's a race problem here or a gender problem there or a class problem here or LGBTQ problem or disability and many other social problems. But it's a way, I think, enabled me to understand that this sort of binary thinking was a problem and issue with identity politics, and that there are another way of looking at multiple disadvantage that so many of us face, and this was called intersectionality. And I've some of your listeners are interested. I wrote a blog for Skills for Care and I threw in a mix of Peaky Blinders, Kimberly Crenshaw, and the famous Spaghetti Junction to try and emphasise some of my issues. But I have a working assumption, and I like to embrace, and I believe deep down most people are decent people, you know. So it's about, you know, let's face it, we are living through historic times, and historians have long known that a crisis can be a turning point for societies. And it's not difficult to imagine how current crises could lead us down a dark path. But also crises have often been abused by those in power. So it's a way of having dialogue for me.
Great. And I mean, again, hugely important, all of the people that you've pointed out there. And there's a clip from Kimberly Crenshaw that I want to put up in a second. And I think it's important to really enlighten people about the issues behind what they're saying and how important it is. And I love the way you've kind of brought it all together there. And as you were speaking, I was thinking about the spaghetti junction, because when you're talking about intersectionality, I mean, it's a great metaphor really of those intersections that she uses anyway. But it's more than just one meeting another. It's just a whole kind of tapestry of things that come together. And the whole point you made about these false binaries that we create so that people can either agree to be in one camp or the other, it's really just a fallacy, and it suits politics a lot, but in reality we all know it doesn't work like that. And COVID is really I think highlighting that, and then it's not letting people get away with saying why, you know, you're either for or against a certain type of view, world view, because we all are affected by it in some way. So I think it's a really, really useful point to kind of bring up and to mention the idea of intersectionality, and it is going to gain momentum, I think, as time goes on. So I really appreciate that. And on what you were talking about, power and privilege as well, it's just a huge topic, I think, in social care and amongst disability studies. And so just to unpick all these things and even just mention them, I think is just brilliant. So I want to just bring in the clip with Kimberly Crenshaw. There's one with Maya's Angelou as well, but we'll play out with that one, and we'll just do a little bit of the clip, and then we'll bring everybody back in, and then I might just even come out myself and let you all kind of talk about any issues that you want to talk about. I think that we did that in one of our last live streams, and it was really good to kind of bring me out and just let people almost have a discussion, and you're kind of a fly on the wall just talking about your different areas. So we might do that in a moment. So yeah, firstly the clip from Kimberly.
Intersectionality is just a metaphor for understanding the ways that multiple forms of inequality or disadvantage sometimes compound themselves, and they create obstacles that often are not understood within conventional ways of thinking about anti-racism or feminism or whatever social justice advocacy structures we have. Intersectionality isn't so much a grand theory, it's a prism for understanding certain kinds of problems. African American girls are 6 times more likely to be suspended than white girls. That's probably a race and a gender problem. It's not just a race problem, it's not just a gender problem. So I encourage people to think about how the convergence of race stereotypes or gender stereotypes might actually play out.
Great. So I cut it off there because you can go and find out more yourself if you like. Go and Google her and get kind of up to date with what she's saying. But it's a bit of a taster even, and what it's all about. So I'm going to bring everybody back in, and you're all doing such fantastic work, and I know that you do generally know what each other is doing, but I think it would be nice to hear from you, from your different points of view, what you're kind of involved in at the moment in terms of supporting or promoting the issues around race and equality and social care, and then give you all a kind of like a moment to reflect on that individually with each other all in the stream, and then ask each other kind of probing questions. And anyone who's watching, if you want to ask questions in the chat, I'll pop in and out and then put them to the speakers as well. So if everyone's okay with that, maybe we'll start off. Suan, maybe you can just talk about what you're focusing on, and then maybe go to Dudley and then to Clenton, and then just have a discussion really after that, if that's okay. All right, I'm going to pop out now.
Sure. So within the nursing home sector, in terms of what we're doing to support individuals, we do BAME risk assessments for all our staff members, because obviously we are aware that there's a heightened risk to individuals working in this sector. And what we do is, from that, we ascertain what sort of support mechanisms we need to put in place to enable them to work safely, and clearly to look at the numbers of deaths during the first peak of COVID, and then now going into a second wave, how we can actually make those reductions in terms of our ethnic minority staff members. We also are aware that there's certain underlying medical conditions which we pick up on when we do our BAME risk assessment, so sickle cell being one of them, that puts them at even greater risk of contracting the virus, and obviously even fatalities as a result. So we put people on furlough. We make sure that even though the scheme is ending in our ending of October, that we continue to pay staff whilst they're off, just so that there wouldn't be any financial implications as a result of that. We do wellness CAFs for our staff members, and this isn't just for BAME, it's for everyone working in social care, because we feel that mental health related issues are less brought out by the BAME staff, i.e. they're not very vocal about how they're feeling in terms of those sorts of issues. So we have a wellness CAF, which basically just gives them a space to explore that and to talk about openly how they're feeling. And if we feel and they express a need for further support, it's there as well. So we have 10 mental health first aiders within our organization, and we also have employee assistance program, which basically just supports people who need that extra support. And that could be cognitive behavioral therapy, or could be that they just want to speak to somebody that's neutral to go through their circumstance and see what support else is out there for them. Equally, during I'm talking more so about what we are doing in terms of our staff members here, and to inject some enthusiasm levels and to bring us back to where we were before the first peak, and even now where people are still not getting visitors, etc., within the care home setting. We are a part of a pilot project which is from the NHSX, and what that is trying to do is to identify key residents, relatives that will still be able to come and see their loved ones, especially those that struggle with certain types of mental health related conditions that may mean that they would not be eating as much, or they would not allow other carers to support them with personal care or daily living tasks. So what we're trying to achieve now is a system whereby there is a key worker for a resident that is their relative themselves. So whereby our staff get weekly testing, we would obviously be needing to do that for these relatives, and also to give them good training on infection control, donning and doffing. And it's imperative that we continue to have those social contacts, because we also notice majority of our residents that live in Priscilla are from African Caribbean backgrounds, and we do know that the mental health impact on COVID has been tremendous. And so we would like to continue to see those sorts of support. So it could even be things like bringing in their cultural foods, which they were used to having prior to COVID. And we do have African Caribbean chefs here that support with that. But equally, sometimes it's good to have your home soups brought in by your relative who actually know and what you're familiar with. So we continue to just be there to support those sorts of theories. And if there is a pilot project, we are the ones that usually put our hands up for that. So if there's any questions, please pop them in the chat. But that's really what we're doing at Priscilla Wakefield House around the subject matter of BAME and supporting individuals to live good, well-rounded lives.
Great, thank you for that, Siwan. And I loved all those examples of stuff that you're doing. I was taking notes at the same time. Dudley or Clinton, maybe we'll use this time to see if you had anything you wanted to ask about Siwan about what she's doing.
Go on, Clinton.
Siwan, how have you tried to make this more? You gave some great examples of, about the cultural food side of experience. How have you enabled that to grow in the organisation?
So yeah, that's a very good question, Clinton. We have so many diverse backgrounds at our workplace. Not just our residents are diverse, i.e. majority African Caribbean residents. We also have Asian residents, but we also have a diverse workforce. And with that comes quite a lot of knowledge and experience, even around cooking. So one of the things that we did, I myself, being from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, that's where I was raised, but I was actually born in Tortola, which is a British Virgin Island. We have like cornmeal porridge in the morning, or Nnamani corn porridge, or, plantain porridge. And these are things that our chef wasn't able to make. So what we did is we went in and we gave a demonstration as to how it's made, and we actually made it for our residents to test out whether they still have those sorts of tastes that they would like to have those things continued. And now instead of your generic porridges, we have cornmeal porridge, plantain porridge, you know, all these sorts of things that they're used to, and they're really enjoying them. And especially now that the weather is kind of getting to that cold state, we are starting to bring in the different soups. So cow foot soup, you know, chicken foot soup, all the things that they'd be used to. And also for our African residents, we do have residents that like their fufu and, you know, their pounded yam, and we make sure that they continue to have that and are able to eat with their hands if they choose to do so. So we try our best to bring in the skill set of our staff, to educate our chef and kitchen team if there's things that they don't know how to do. And we always look up recipes online as well if we ourselves don't know the sorts of things that we might have spoken about. So yeah, we try our best to meet in their needs.
Thank you for sharing that.
Dudley, did you have anything for Suan?
Suan's covered so much and done it so well. Just quickly, how's it been received with the local authorities and commissioners on what you're doing, and how have you shared this outside of your home, and how well received has it been?
Yeah, so we definitely, it's been well received by the local authority. There's certain KPIs that we have to evidence on a monthly basis, and as part of those discussions, we also share all the good practice. We have consistent emails that we send to our CQC inspector to let them know what we're doing, and also the local authority. And it makes me really proud as a registered manager to see that staff are really on board with all the things that we're wanting to do to support our residents. And equally in terms of the sharing, before COVID happened, we had a care home come dine with me experience where our residents actually went to other care homes and rated them accordingly, you know, so there was a criteria similar to come dine with me. And we were able to say, well, this is what we felt would be better. And so helping them to think about good practice. And equally, they visited Priscilla and we gave them the full works. And again, even our inspector on the day of our inspection said to me that people make an assumption that because you're not from the same ethnic background that you don't like those types of foods. So on the day of the inspection, the inspector, who is a local resident of Tottenham, actually said, I love oxtail and rice and peas. And he was very impressed, being from a Caucasian background himself, that we were offering those types of food. And he said he grew up around those sorts of cultures and he enjoys that type of food. So we don't make assumptions at Priscilla. We assume that everybody is going to at least try it once. And if they don't like it, obviously we readapt and try and change it to meet the needs of the people we're supporting.
You're on mute minute, Dudley.
The question I'd like to ask, Suan, did you win? I think that's what we all want to know.
Actually, we came second, and there was a reason for that. It was where we chose to have the meals. So we have a cafe at the reception with lots of different tables, and most of the care homes don't have that. So when we went to their home, it was actually where the residents dined. So we learned from that, and hopefully after we get out of where we're at in terms of COVID, we'll definitely be doing that again, and we're going to come out on top.
Wow, that is fantastic. And I just want to know if I can book a place, to be honest with you, because I am dying to try all the different porridges, and a chicken foot soup as well. You don't hear that on many menus. I mean, come on, that is
Can I share with you what was on the menu today? we had jerk chicken and rice and peas, and it was absolutely delicious.
I haven't had lunch yet, so stop. No, that is fantastic. And that is the way to do it, I think. You know, really person-centered, thoughtful, including the community, including the people who you're supporting, the staff. It's a real feel of we're all in it together. We're not just, you know, doing tasks of bathing people and feeding people basic stuff. It's really making it a home. So just wonderful to hear from you. Thank you so much for sharing and the brilliant questions. So maybe can we do the same with Dudley?
Yeah, that's fine. I don't know how to follow up after that one. I'm feeling so hungry. I want to put an order in. So, starting with myself, I'd just like to start by saying a lot really came around after the pandemic and with the effect of COVID-19 on the Black and ethnic minority community. Also with the sad death of George Floyd, many sectors and industries were challenged whether racism did exist. And if so, what were we doing? It made me look back and have a look around our sector and see what's happening. And as I mentioned earlier, we comprise around 21% of the sector's workforce. And we're overrepresentation of the actually 14% of the population of England. In regards to management, Skills for Care in 2019 found that only 17% of senior management roles are filled by Black, Asian and minority ethnic people. It shows that we're underrepresented in management positions. There's been many comments and responses from the sector, and I thought it would be pertinent to address this point from the social care sector. I wondered what I could do and how it would work. So I decided, after speaking to many people in around the sector and thinking what was missing and what is available, I decided to go out, and I'm the founder of RESCA. RESCA, which stands for Race Equality and Social Care Alliance. Our mission is to make race inclusive, not exclusive, to all those working in and being served by the social care sector. The aim really is for the Alliance to create a fair and totally inclusive organisation with the social care sector that enables all of us to have an equality and to do our best for the diverse communities we serve. It's not acceptable in the year 2020 that there are people still experiencing discrimination and unacceptable behaviour within the sector. RESCA has been created to tackle and be a voice against race inequality within the social care. I was taught that fear like racial oppression was to be overcome. So walk with your head held high. My parents taught me this. I've carried this ethos throughout my life, and this is something that is embodied in the heart of the Alliance. With feedback from many managers and the workforce, various virtual discussions and successful webinar series, RESCA realised there must be a voice for those on the ground level up to address businesses, local authorities, governmental, institutional, large organisations' values and ideas to do a more modern and fair way of working. So we'll be a place for, and we want RESCA to be a place for people to express concerns, issues, be a safe haven amongst like open-minded people and express positive stories, ideas, policies and risk assessments, similar to what Sue-Ann has just mentioned. RESCA is here to help upkeep race equality and remind everyone that this is not here today and gone tomorrow, or just a tick box exercise, but something that should be incorporated in our everyday practices through all areas of social care as we serve the growing diverse communities. The aim is to provide a national organisation, a group of people around the country coming together with one voice, being a vehicle for change. An association for all workers within the social care sector to come together on all matters relative to race equality, all making up one alliance. That's really what we've come about, and that's what I want RESCA to really represent as it goes forward. I think it's really important in these current times that such a thing is really brought forward, and I think it's pertinent that, you know, this is taken seriously as a community or people of colour or Black, Asian and minority ethnic community. There's lots of good work that's happened since the pandemic and the death of George Floyd. And what's happened is you have little sections up around the country and we're all saying the same thing. But unfortunately, we don't have a national voice because we're not joining together. It's really trying to provide a platform that we can all speak together, feel safe, but also learning. And it includes the alliance, includes everyone to be part of it. There's so many good works going on, and really tying it into one place, sharing this, and people to be members of an organization where they can actually be signposted when they're feeling simple things that they can do. One thing that I'm really passionate about is really practical solutions to a lot of issues that we have. And sometimes things have to be waited. Reports take a year for it to happen. And a lot of the time we can do things right now. You know, I mentioned, I wrote a blog, which is also posted in Skills for Care, about having a diversity champion in your workplace that people can actually put in place. You know, having these things are really easy things that we can do, but educating people about culture. Suran has said and mentioned about people cooking and learning other people's dishes and so forth, and they seem to be quite tasty from what I've heard. But the real factor and the driving force is that this is continuous. We come together, we really have a plan in place, and this is really a thought for us going forward. So I would implore you to go to the website of RESCA. I think it's down across there, and really add your thoughts, and let's join together.
So, Dudley, question for you. Obviously, during the first peak of COVID, we noticed that there was a heightened awareness of Black ethnic minority, just an awareness of what's going on. And we noticed that that's obviously starting to dwindle, which I'm really pleased with your plight to keep the mantra going, even beyond the History Month, because it's ending very soon. So my question to you is, how do you propose to make race inclusive within social care? Any thoughts?
I thought of this, and this is where I started, by putting together RESCA. I think we have to have a platform. I think we saw with the Skills for Care webinar series that they provided for BAME and COVID-19, that there was a national platform which people were allowed to go on. They're able to share their thoughts. What it would take, the alliance, is great-minded people across the sector, people in this room, people that we've come across, who are already saying things, and they're all saying the same things. The task force on the that Reesting was produced showed the recommendations of what people of a Black and Asian minority ethnic group could be doing. And I think there's always been the case where there've been great suggestions, recommendations, but really sometimes we just have to act. And I think we've been shown recently is that lots of other sectors have actually done something positively. And I think it's about that time to do that. And rather than sit and wait, I think coming together, talking, being more unified is really the way forward. And I think that's one of the ways we're going to try and move forward and have a voice, so that it goes up not just for those on the ground level, for our carers, but also up to boardrooms and up to the government. And I think this thing has to be continued, and the strength in numbers is really the key.
Thanks, Dudley. Really useful. My question is, with multiple disadvantage, how are you winning over? Because you talked about alliances and allies. How are you bridging that gap of building understanding with? I'd use my own personal experience. I'm Black. I've got a disability, and I've got I use mental health services, but also I got dyslexia. So how, if we split into the social identity elements and what I talked about, the binary thinking, how are you gonna be inclusive? Because you've talked about inclusive, because some of the issues are pattern of disadvantage. So how are you gonna mobilize allies towards the cause?
Yeah, I thought of this as well, and it's a really good question, Clenton. I think what was shown is that there have been many causes which happen within various sectors, but within social care, I think what has really joined us together really was the notion of diversity, but the race and diversity has shown that there was an appetite for it. I think people have seen that within the whole period now of COVID-19 and pandemic, that even BAME risk assessments has been produced and has come together, which has been now incorporated in most workplaces. It's been recognized. And I think the starting point is that if we try to make this bigger than what it is, then we start to sort of being fragmented again. I think we have a goal in mind of really figuring out race equality within our sector. We can educate people in and around the sector. We can make people aware. We can join people together. One stat that I found was really interesting is that we talk about the workforce, but we also have to think about the people we care for. And as we grow older, or the generations, first generations that came to this country, you know, they say that there's going to be at least a 10-fold increase in the next 40 years of Black, Asian and ethnic minorities in and around the elderly environment, and or people who need to be cared for. So I think rather than questioning on being inclusive, we have to think of what's in front of us and how do we cope? What do we do? What can we do now? I think sharing of minds, putting things together, I think is key. Clenton, I think you were part of the task force that produced the report for BAME, and I think they were given, and I think Sophie will probably give me a better sort of like time frame. They had a short time frame to produce something which was really credible. And I think if we're given time, then we can actually sit down and put something which can have more teeth and be continuous. And that discussion can, it doesn't just, I think people always expect a solution overnight. I think if we sit down, we can put it together and figure it out. But you have to have people at the table in the first place. And I think that's the key factor.
Thank you for that, Dudley. That was really helpful. And I think that was a great answer to the question. You know, you want to be inclusive, but you need to start from a point of just at least getting people around the table. And hopefully you will include all those different diverse experiences and people and ethnicities around the table with what you're doing. Can I ask a very practical question about when people can people sign up now?
Yeah, if you click on, I think the link is underneath there, you can actually join or I can add you. I'm on LinkedIn, you can get me there. Also as well, if you actually go on the website and you put your email address down, we will start putting things together. I think the conversation will happen where I've launched the site. I've been working tirelessly over the last sort of month, and the site is there together. And to watch out for events starting and conversations start happening in the month of November. And it's the start of something which is going to be continuous.
Great. And I love the fact of bringing people together and that togetherness, because a lot of the time you find, whether it's the media or just institutions, like to promote one or two people to talk on an issue, whether it's with race or disability, and then they become champions. And actually a space where we can just all support each other and be our own champions in our own area. I think that is just really, really powerful. And I know we're running a bit to time, part of it because I was a bit late back to back today, but hopefully people can stick on. But I wanted to move on now to Clenton, and the same format. If Siwan and Dudley can ask him questions afterwards, that would be great. And do everyone else put in any questions or thoughts in the chat as well. Over to you, Clenton.
I just want to pick up on a point that Dudley made. One of the coalition, for a better word, is happening next week, and it's called Social Care Futures, and it's looking at the vision and what is the common ground for professionals, the workforce, commissioners, to look at what is the vision for social care. That includes people who use services being the centre of what this system should look like and what matters most. and it's looking at what would be the new vision for models of accommodation. What would commissioning look like? What would an equal social care future look like? So it's looking at the different aspects, and that starts on the 4th, 5th, and 6th of November. I just wanted to get that plug because it's creating that momentum for the sector to coalesce around social care, because there's not a real understanding of the word social care. It's often seen just for older people or for younger people, but most of social care comes from working age people. So it's understanding that it's not just about care homes, supported living. Like I said, I employ my own personal assistant, understanding the variety within the sector, that it's not just about you talked about workforce. There's a workforce that often not talked about, personal assistants. So it's looking at that. But my motivation basically is to look at the bigger picture, what COVID has talked about. And for me, it's about the structural inequality within COVID, because COVID has brought around Black and Asian minority ethnic, the existing fault lines have widened within this period. If you look at disability, learning disability and autism has widened. Issues around carers, that has widened. The issues for the workforce has widened. So we need to come together, because they are structural disadvantages. By going down the road of binary thinking, we create a hierarchy of my needs are worse than your needs, when there are structural disadvantage in the system that we haven't talked about. And that's why, for me, my fear is that we'll once again get confused about tackling inequality, because most people see inequality as a social problem. And if you see it just as a social problem, you then put it in the space of it's down to individual choices, individual lifestyle. That's how social problems are viewed. But if we view it through the lens of a political problem, and that's where structural inequality lies, within a political lens, not a social problem. And one of the biggest issues around social care is there's not a shared understanding of what is social care, especially if you ask the public. So, and it's understanding that when we talk about social care, I don't live just in social care. What I want social care to do is enable me to have a life, a fulfilling life. And that's the thing that we focus on, not so much on services. When you speak to people who use services, they talk about a life, not a service. And it's about balancing those things. You talked about KPIs. Key performance indicators are normally the measurements for systems and processes, not for people. And being part of the discussion around quality matters, we're looking at how do you align KPIs with KHIs. And KHIs are key human indicators. Those are what matters most to the individual. And it would be the team at Think Local at Personal would have me if I didn't even mention making it real. Making it real is what matters most to people who use services. Viewing it through an I statement and a we statement, what the organisations would meet to meet the I statements of what matters most to the individual. And that's some of the things that we can coalesce around. When we talk about quality, quality means different things to different people. We haven't got a single view of what that means. in the sector. So for me, that's why intersectionality is a way of having dialogue, and I say dialogue, not debate, because once you put it through the lens of debate, people then view it as right or wrong argument, and that's not helpful. There's multiple truths. How do we accommodate those different viewpoints? And that's why, for me, it's about how you build an alliance for your structural inequalities. And also, before I forget, some of the work that we've been doing at TLAP, we on the 13th of October, we produced a report from the TLAP Insight Group that looked at the trying to get the understanding of the impact of COVID-19 on people who access care and support. And we did a rapid evidence review with recommendations, and there were 14 recommendations. I won't go through them all, but the core element was to, when people who talk about who use services, they talk about there's a rhetoric reality gap. You know what? And what we were trying to do at Think Local Act Personal is remind people about personalisation and co-production. And Sue, you gave an excellent example of co-production. Co-production with the people who use services to what matters most to them, food. And in the Jamaican heritage where I come from, there's a saying, each one, teach one. Now, you know, so for alliances, how are we helping the other multiple alliances, each one, teach one? And the only way to do that is coalesce around the patterns of disadvantage that stop opportunities and human potential.
I'm raring to go, Clenton, because I absolutely loved everything you just said, and it really resonates with me. And my first question to you, and I've written it down, is, as a user of services yourself, how do you see the future of social care?
As a future of social care, that's why I got involved in Social Care Future, because I want a better future. When we talk about social care, most people talk about social care either in the terms of fatalism, that it's at a tipping point, it's in crises. Now, my mother, my 85-year-old mum, I look after her care package. She has a life. She has, you know, she's got multiple long-term conditions, and she employs her own personal assistant. She does. When before COVID, going around doing lunch clubs with the church, handing out food. You know, even though she's got her oxygen and bringing that, she's still doing the things that give her purpose. That's what social care is. It enables us to have a life that other people take for granted. That's the point of social care, and we've kind of lost the sight of what social care does. And I hope I've answered that question too.
Most definitely you have.
So question, Clenton, because I'm just like you, very passionate of really trying to get that message across. And I'm sure we will have tentacles in more areas in and around this sector. You mentioned something which I think it sounds fantastic. So just from a practical point of view, and really from a financial point of view, how do you expect this to go forward and change not just the mindset, but financially make this work, considering as it seems like a real sea change in our sector?
And the sea change for our sector is putting people who use services at the centre. You know, and it's saying what matters most, and that's if people get the chance, come along to and get involved in Social Care Future, because we're having dialogue of what this new future might look like. What would commissioning look like? What would, what would be an equal society. You know, we've got issues around inequality. You know, one of the things that I talk about is the 3 I's. You know, and one of the 3 I's is, first I is about ignorance. There are a lot of people who have ignorance, who are blinded about what's going on, don't understand the history and all of the things that matter. And then you've got the second I of indifference, you know, and people, you know, saying, well, it's got nothing to do with me because you know, it doesn't touch my life. But social care touches, you know, our lives and everybody's lives. But a lot of people are not even aware of where it touches, you know, and that's why the dialogue and the new conversation needs to happen about this, because we are viewed through the lens as, you know, care for, not care with or care of. They are perceived then as passive recipients of service. Anyone who said to my mum at 85 years she was a passive recipient of service, she'd get her handbag and slap you over the head with it. So these are the things and conversations we need to have. You know, people have new expectations of what care, you know, social care should look like. But we're still in the old model of care to and care for. What does care with and care alongside? This is different models of how care will do. And this is why personalisation, co-production are different vehicles to enable us to have a different dialogue.
Hold on a minute. Did I miss an I? I've got
I'll come back to the other I. The third I is inaction. Yeah. When we look at the pandemic, and most people are so frightened to do something about it. You touched on it, Dudley, and that gives you inaction. And we need to create the momentum for intentional action. And for me, the intentional action is to address structural inequality. And structural inequality is the issues that institutions and organisations use through policy, procedures and practice. Well, you know, everyone talks about the system. For me, the system isn't broken. The system is working exactly the way it was meant to work. The only issue is equality or inclusion or diversity wasn't at the forefront of the people who was in the room designing it at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you. And what I feel, and I love the idea, we've posted links to the Social Care Futures conference next week, and I've booked myself onto a couple of the things there as I can in between my day. So I absolutely encourage people to attend, because I think we need to have a conversation. But my passion is always around inaction. It's that third eye. And I'm glad I asked you about that third eye, because I was writing them down. Because and I love the fact everyone we've got on this panel is they're doing something. They're in it to make a difference. All of you are doing something. But what I worry about is a lot of the people who we put our trust in to represent us aren't doing enough. So that's in our politics, that's in our leadership, that's in our law. So I want to see, following on from what you've all kind of highlighted to me, and on your last point, Clenton, as I want to see us questioning the people who we elect. What are you doing in this space? How are you supporting me? And if you're not supporting me, I'm not going to vote for you. I'm going to ask for a change in leadership within my organization, because it is about the structures. If we don't have those people there who are gunning for us, then what are they doing it for? Why are they in the job? Why are they a director of adult social care? Why are they a local MP? Why are they a councillor for health and social care? Why are they there if they're not fighting for us? And it's the same with our laws. When they, one of the things that I try to do with Coproduce Care is to support people to get involved in consultations about law change with social care, because a lot of our laws, like you say, they aren't working with us. Some of them are, but they don't go far enough. You know, I often think about CQC and what they regulate. Why isn't one of their key lines of inquiry, that's it, Chloe's, like a race equality or a res or something like that? They don't even cover that. They cover a lot of other things, safety, caring. They don't cover race. If they did, lo and behold, all organizations start doing something about it. So in terms of structures and what we change, 100%, because what I see on this panel is just huge amounts of progress, and we need it across the board. We need to put people at the forefront. We need to create spaces like what Dudley was talking about. We need to think more about how we change our organizations from the top, like Sue-Ann was talking about, Clenton, everything that you've said about intersectionality and including people. It all needs to happen. So I've really, really enjoyed this conversation. Yes, I'll give everyone a chance to have some last words. If anyone does need to leave, do just wave at us. But Dudley, you wanted to come back.
Just a point, and I think we have to also learn. One thing I am not upset. One thing that worries me sometimes with the social care sector, we're always slow to act. There's lots of things going in other different sectors, and sometimes social care sector can be almost the last one to jump on board. What I found in being a chair for many of the various London boroughs that I am is that the amount of sheer numbers of people that actually are under me in regards to that. And so in numbers, if we bound together numbers as an army, you provide unity, you provide a voice. And I think we shouldn't forget that. Sometimes we usually used to send one person out into the field to try and use that person to, and then they'll come back and say, oh, we couldn't do this, or this wasn't approved. But I think if we put the numbers together, you literally see, as I said, association of members, you've got petitions. If people sign things, it really makes a difference. So really getting those from the bottom up, you know, you would see that the amount of numbers will come together, and there is a big voice in regards to that. And I think that's one of the things that I really am passionate about.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Sue-Ann, have you got any last words for us before we close?
Yes, I'm gonna back Dudley on that. I think the inaction, the last I that Clenton spoke of is really, really key, because I do know that Clenton, you worked a lot with the CQC around being an individual user of services. And it's very interesting around the topic of human indicators, because they need to drive what it is an individual wants within social care, as opposed to it being that this is what you need. We need to ask the people using services what it is that they need. And I think there's so many prescriptions around how things work within social care. It needs to be coming from that individual themselves and not a top-down approach, i.e. this is what you get in social care. More or less like what you've shared, Clenton, about your mother having her own individual budget. I do know that when that idea first came about, I was actually one of the care homes that had one of our residents in residential setting, i.e. residential nursing home setting, that was on an individual budget, and everybody was perplexed as to, oh my goodness, is this going to work? How is it going to work? And again, back to what Dudley said around the funding element, at the end of the day, if I had the choice over what I use my individual budget to do, it would inform how I'm going to be able to support myself within care, do the things that I enjoy doing, whereby if you're funded for specific elements of your care, and everything else is an add-on or an extra. So I'm really, really, really looking forward to, again, logging on to, I wasn't aware of the social care future, so I'm not sure where that's been advertised, but I will share it within North Central London WhatsApp group that I'm on, and also to the CCGs to try to strengthen that voice. But I think this is what's missing as well, because there aren't always they're not always linked up thinking in terms of what's out there, and people don't always know. So it's really good to hear about that, and I'll definitely be joining that. So thank you.
Brilliant. That's a great point. Not enough people know about these things, and it is about sharing it. So I've got an action point for myself that by the end of this week, I'm going to make sure I share all the stuff that you all are doing. Dudley's work, Clenton, you mentioned lots of stuff with TNAP, share all some clips from what Sue-Ann you talked about. And I think in terms of commissioning, we need to get our commissioners in on this debate, because at the moment it's like an optional extra that people can engage with these discussions. When I talk to Martin Routledge, when I talk to people who are doing the work in these spaces, they've got some really great things to say, but not enough people are engaging with it. So brilliant points, Sue-Ann. And Clenton, any last thoughts from you?
The last thought for me around inequality and addressing that inaction point, for me, goodwill alone will not heal us. Everyone keeps talking about goodwill, but goodwill alone will not heal us as a people. I'm more interested in how we address deep structural and systematic questions about discrimination and inequality. And so, if you talked about the law, the British legal and social economic orders, we haven't really touched on, and which are largely built on racism. If you look at that, needs, in my humble opinion, needs tackling. But for me, intersectionality is critical, but it requires us using knowledge gained through practice to guide, the actions in everyday life, and problem solving lies at the heart of intersectionality. So, if you are not around the table, you're often on the menu. And what I'm trying to say, people who use services and professionals and the workforce, all of us, commissioners, government, have to be around the table. But often, people who use services are normally on the menu, but not around the table. So it's about changing those relationships to enable us to understand the thinking, the doing, to close and eradicate inequality. And the different perspectives have to come round the table. And for me, like I said before, it's about actually having dialogue, not an argument, because if you frame it as a debate, people then see yourselves either winners or losers, and then they close their mind to what people who are experiencing multiple disadvantage, their story gets lost at the crossroads. But I'd like to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to give another last word to Dudley, because I know you want to respond to something, Dudley. Go on. I need to unmute. Oh, I muted you. Sorry.
That would be helpful. That would be helpful. Okay. Before I go, we were around Black History Month, and we're looking at racism and issues regarding that. And I'm often asked in current times, what is it like to be a Black person in the UK? And I really found it difficult to articulate a concise answer. So I thought I'd just give you an example of what people may expect, or what they may feel or see. So I'm just going to express something. I'm wearing a mask, yeah? And with this mask, I'm unrecognizable. My voice can't be fully heard. Where we're headed today, and I still can't be seen. And I'm still not 100% heard. The aim of ResCAS is to provide a platform to educate the sector so that people can be seen and heard and recognized. I'm still wearing a mask. I now can be seen, but I can't be heard fully. the aim of equality is to really provide a platform to educate the sector so we can be seen and be heard and recognized. And the aim of RESCA, and main point of it, is that we can have that platform. So we don't have to wear a mask, we can be recognized and be seen. So when people ask what it was like to be a Black person, and when people said wearing masks, they couldn't be heard, they couldn't be recognized, it's only a snippet of certain things that certain people, Black and Asian minority ethnic people, have experienced over time. So really leaving people with that thought of understanding what people have been going through, and hopes that gives some form of slight understanding of experiences of what people, Black, Asian minority ethnic people have experienced.
Thank you. That was really powerful and a great idea to represent it, because some people they just cannot imagine what it feels like, and they can't have that empathy. They really struggle with it. So just to visualize it is really, really helpful. So thank you for that, Dudley. Clenton, you wanted to come back with something else?
It's just a quote, and the quote is from Margaret Lee Shutley, who was the author of Hidden Figures. And especially because it's Black History Month, I think it's quite apt. And she said, history is the sum total of what all of us do on a daily basis. And that plays to me about the inequality, is what are we doing on a daily basis? Are we keeping the status quo, or are we changing the status quo through our daily interactions?
I think we've lost Sophie again.
That's very powerful.
Yeah, very, very. And you too, Dudley. That was a really, really good way of people seeing the reality.
You know what? I'm back again. There are gremlins that are telling me I need to finish this live stream. I'm sorry. But I must say, I must finish it before I totally disappear. And so that was also very powerful. And I know we've gone over, but it does make you think, what are you doing in this space to do something? And also something else that you said about our laws and our history and how it all kind of comes into play into some of the issues that we're having today, and it just won't go away. And it reminded me of what I'm reading in doing my PhD. I'm exploring how colonial discourse, how that influenced our mental health law, so our mental capacity law, our mental health law. But at the moment, I'm kind of reading a lot of work around the Enlightenment. And one of the things I read was written by or said by Immanuel Kant. And we do go to Kant for a lot of the philosophies that influence our what we learn at university and and some of our laws and thoughts on autonomy. And one of the things that he said in one of his essays was, this fellow was quite Black, a clear proof that what he said was stupid. So when we think about what we revere and the people that we revere and what they believed at the time and how that's influenced what we believe now, I think there's a piece of work to be done to explore and unpick that, because the injustices that we see today are nothing new, and to deny that they aren't influenced by things that were said in the past, I think, is to deny something that's really major. And these all influence the people who make our laws, the people who administer them today in universities, the universities that they've been to, usually the Oxbridge, they've usually studied the same philosophy courses, and these trickle into our politics as well. So I think when we see what we see at the moment, we mustn't deny that there's a lot behind it, and what we're trying to do isn't going to be a short, sharp few months. It's just going to be a long run, but it's been fantastic to speak to people who are in this space and doing so much. And I've taken way more of your time than I normally do. So thank you for hanging on. So do take care, all of you. I'll say a couple of last words, but I'll just bring you all out of the stream for now. So thank you and take care.
Thank you.
So I hope you all enjoyed that. I really did. I mean, I had a crazy busy week, but just to sit down and talk to these wonderful, inspirational people has been absolutely fantastic. And we've gone over time, so thank you for keeping with us. A few things I wanted to just highlight to you that's coming up. We've got Una joining us. Una Smith will be joining us on the 4th of November. And Una is the Chief Executive of Skills for Care. And we've had her on before with Martin Green, and we had a discussion last time. But this time she's got another report. We had the state of care that we talked about with Kate Throney last week, the CQC produced. This is one that Skills for Care have done. And if you know anything about Skills for Care, then you'll know that they are focusing on the workforce and the demographics and the makeup of the workforce and of the organizations that are within social care. So if you're interested in data, people often say there's not enough data about social care. Actually, Skills for Care is leading it on that. So definitely get people involved. You can watch it back on the same links that you watch it live. And of course, if you want to join us, then do join us. And if you subscribe to our channel or like our Facebook page and set a reminder, then you don't have to do anything else. You'll be notified. And just a little bit of a hangover from Black History Month, really. We are going to be talking to Councillor Asha Craig. This is actually a live stream which was postponed because obviously she's not just a councillor, she's also Deputy Mayor in Bristol City Council. So she's very busy, but she's managed to fit us in November, and she's doing some fantastic work around the community again, and also supporting people of colour to rise up into really high influential places within the city. So I wanted to unpick all the things that she's doing in that area. And so we'll hear from her. So really, lastly, I wanted to just thank everyone for joining, but also I'm going to play out on something from Mayor Angelou, and I haven't actually seen what this is, so I'm looking forward to watching this. So thanks everyone for joining, and hopefully see you next week for another Chat for Care. Bye everyone.
You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust, I'll arise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? Just because I walk as if I have oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, still I rise. Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my sassiness upset you?